Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 255. I am your convalescent co-host, Loren Gray, who will be departing quite shortly. Had a little surgery done, so I'm not going to be much of an entertainer today. But I want to make sure that I get to say hi and start the show to keep my streak of 255 shows alive. No matter where in the world I am and what's happening, I get to be at least here for a second. With me is my wonderful co-host who will be taking over the show, Mr. Edward StOnge with Flip2, Mr. Stuart Butler with Fluid Fuel Travel, Ms. Adele Gutman with the Library Collection, Ms. Linda Mockerman with TCRM Services and Things Up Enterprises, and someone I just got to say hi to, Ricardo. Ricardo, hi. Mr. Tristan Heaword. I know that, Ricardo, you're a guest of Lily's. I'll let that all happen as it goes in May. And I know Griffin's joining us as well. Thank you all very much for all being here. I'm going to depart the show, but thank you very much for everyone. And enjoy the show. And I will see you all at the next week's show. Bye, guys.
Loren, thank you for your dedication.
Indeed.
Thank you, Lauren. And
laying down on the job, I see you.
Yeah, laying down on the job. I got Nurse Trashy with me. I ain't going anywhere but I'm in the bed. That's all I got. So
get well soon, buddy.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Hey, for the record, Lauren, you're never entertaining anyway, so it's okay. All right,
So Ricardo,
Lily,
welcome to the show. And now you know exactly what to expect.
That's the bar right there. Yeah.
But yeah, you want me to introduce him, Ed?
Yeah, I think you should.
Perfect. So kind of last minute, I reached out to Ota Insight because they are launching this great new tool, Market Insight, that I think is really a game changer for the hospitality industry. And they also have a lot of really cool data around market insights and kind of what's going on around the world because of their reach. So thank you very much, Ricardo, for being willing to join us today and talk a little bit about what's going on for you guys. So I'll let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lily. It's a pleasure to be here. Last minute invite, but yeah, glad we can make it and join this. I mean, it's 255 strict and a great discussion panel also. So yeah, like Lily commented, I work as BDM and Ota Insight. For the ones who don't know, Ota Insight is one of the fast tech companies. Fast-growing companies in the world for hospitality. And indeed, we've just launched a new product. And maybe more importantly, that the product itself is the discussion behind the concept of the product. So that is something I thought of bringing to the table today to discuss, because I think that impacts a lot the future of the way hotels will manage their data and manage their forecasts on the future, which on a really uncertain moment that we all live in. So just not sure, how do can I share my screen here?
You can. So you have an option just above, where was it? Oh, to the top left of your screen, you'll see a camera, then a plus sign. Okay. If you hit the plus sign, you'll see share screen.
Great, thank you.
And it'll leave Stuart's picture up.
No, it's just you for me. That's all I can see.
For me, it's just Stuart. Oh, I see me. I saw me there too. That's weird that I see Stuart. You can toggle by hitting the right arrow.
It picks your favorite person.
On what host you want to look at.
Yeah. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Great. So yeah, we've just launched 2 days ago a new product, one of our newest tool called Market Insight. And again, the idea behind this product, the timing is definitely a coincidence because we're working on this product for more than a year now. So we couldn't definitely predict what was going to happen in 2020. But I think the product comes in really the right moment. I'm not here to do a sales pitch about the product, but more important is the concept behind it. And that's the discussion I would love to hear from you guys and bring to the table today, which is, if you think the way hotels used to plan and use data was really based in what we call outdated data. So they're really looking at really static data. So what was my on the book levels for last year on the same time period? What's my pickup? What are my competitors doing in terms of pricing points? What are other internal data that I have, like the number of groups I have in-house for a specific day already on the books, the number of trends in business and all those stuff. So hotels were leveraged that really well. So the forecasts were being, in most ways, really accurate. And hotels were really confident with working up those old patterns on the books and pickups in order to generate their forecast. But then we had this pandemic, which just changed everything. So we hear a lot of the new normal in a lot of different ways in our lives. And definitely there will be a new normal in hospitality also. In our thoughts, this new normal is, in terms of strategies and revenue management, is really the way hotels are going to look at data in the future. So again, we're facing a really uncertain moment, which hotels are not being able to rely in any kind of data because they can't compare the second half of the year with the second half of the year of 2019. That doesn't make sense. They're not having pickup patterns, so they can't really rely on that also. So the hotels are a bit lost in, okay, how can I forecast if my basis of analysis and my base starting point is not reliable anymore? So I think we're gonna have a big impact on that in the way hotels look at data, just because we're gonna start seeing a movement in terms of trying to find different kinds of data. If you think of industries like the e-commerce giants, like airlines, even like the OTAs, they look at conversion. That's definitely an important metric. But a second really important metric, they're looking at search patterns. They're looking at what we call pre-booking data. They're not looking at, okay, how many items they've sold or how many rooms they've sold if they're an OTA in a specific hotel or market. They're also looking at the searches, because searches is the first indicator of demand in any kind of industry. You know, if people start searching for something, that's because probably you're going to have demand. And if you think of hospitality business, hotels weren't looking into that until now. Of course, they are still not looking into that kind of data. They're still looking at conversion and on the books, which is the final step of demand. Demand starts really much earlier than when someone books a hotel room. It starts when they start searching maybe for a flight for that destination, or they start searching hotels online. The customer journey starts really ahead of those moments. So that's the concept and an idea we're thinking for a long time now in Ota Insight is, how can we help hotels leverage that kind of data? Because I think we're a little bit behind other industries in mindset. So, especially now that, again, you can rely on the book patterns and even pickup patterns, maybe those kinds of data are fundamental for you to be able to really understand what's going on your market, how is maybe a second or third wave of COVID-19 is impacting your business again, even on markets that we've seen a start of recovery. So that's something we love discussing with hotels and other players, which is, okay, what are your thoughts about this new kind of data? So again, if you think of the way hotels used to use data to predict demand for the future, they were always looking at what we call post-bookings. So they were looking at their PMS data. They were looking at benchmark data even for the future. So how many transient room nights I have and how many of my competitors have throughout tools in the market. And they were using other post-booking data. But there is an entire universe of data available to the hotels, or maybe they weren't available until now, but they can be available to the hotels that really can help them open their minds in terms of predicting demand. So if you think of when people start exploring a destination, so maybe I want to travel to London, I'm going to start maybe checking Google in terms of London. I'm going to start checking what's happening in the city. Is there any specific better time of the year to go to London and all those stuff? So I'm going to explore the destination. Then maybe I'm going to start checking flights. If I've decided when I want to go to London, I'm going to start checking flight prices online to see what's flight rates rates for that days or for that period of the year that I want to go. And maybe if I book my flight, I'm going to start checking hotels. So maybe I want to start checking meta search channels or maybe brand.com websites or OTAs to see what's the better location for me to stay in, what's the better hotel that I want to select based on what I like. And nowadays, people are also searching to alternative accommodation. So maybe I'm searching Airbnb and any other player to see, okay, am I staying at a hotel or maybe at a alternative accommodation. So all of those things, they convert into data points that can be really powerful for hotels to rely on when they want to predict demand. And that didn't happen. That is really happening in other industries, even in the OTA side, because they have that kind of technology. But the hospitality industry as a whole was really behind on that. So I think that's the next step, and probably one of the most important next steps that the hospitality industry will take in order to analyze data. So again, more important than the product itself is the concept behind it, which is you be able to, for any future dates, in our case for the next 365 days, really be able to predict demand and have a clear picture of what's happening on your market based on all of those data points. So on OTAInsights side, in marketing side, we look at flight searches, online hotel searches in a majority of vested channels, GDS, alternative accommodations, events, and holidays, and we look at the pricing strategies of the market to put that all together in a high-level machine learning and IA in order to predict demand. Because again, if we check what happened in the past 20 years with different types of events that impact the demand, it's really, really hard to relate on, okay, for August, this is my on-the-book pattern for the last 3 years. What happened 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or maybe last year is completely different what's going to happen this year. So that's part of the discussion I want to bring to the table today, which is, are the hotels ready to face that? How can that impact really the demand evaluation and analysis of the hotels in the future? Because I really think the present way hotels do forecast and they analyze the segmentations and then predict the future is already past. The future is totally different, and I think that was a process in course. Probably a slow process, but the pandemic, COVID-19, has definitely speeded the need of accelerating that. So again, as a coincidence, we're launching Market Insight in that environment, but because this concept has been in our minds for maybe more than a year, 2 years now. So again, the idea here to discuss is what's the new normal in terms of forecasting and segmentations and demand evaluation to hospitality. I think the hospitality business needs to give a new step into comprehending those billions of data points that have at a pre-stay level or upper funnel level, and how can they leverage that in their strategies. And I would love to hear your comments on that.
Well, thank you, Ricardo. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through that. And I think it's really nice to actually see companies starting to think this way, because that data has been available for a long period of time. And it's been the likes of digital marketers, like many people on the show at the moment. Certainly, I know myself and Ben, we've been using that type of data just on a daily basis. It's absolutely vital for us to make decisions.
I don't mean to cut Tris off, but I've been sitting there the whole time, Ricardo, saying, I hate you right now because you're automating a thing we've been selling to clients for a long time. But God bless you for doing it. Go ahead, Tris. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No,
it's fine. But the beauty of it is now is it's still great that we're doing all of that. We're still going to be required to do that from a digital marketing standpoint, because you're still going to have to optimize the pre-stay, marketing funnel. But we've now got a tool that hotels can potentially use that data to better understand what's going on. And more importantly, from my personal point of view, selfish point of view, better understand what we're actually doing. because there's a lot of the hoteliers that we've tended to work with in the past. They know what digital marketing is, at a very high level, but perhaps don't truly understand all of the data points that could be available, that could be so beneficial for them with revenue management strategies, with marketing strategies, with dealing with occupancy problems, and how you can combat those dips.
Well, and what's really important about this is, you're talking about the difference between leading indicators and trailing indicators, right? Conversions and bookings and things like that are trailing indicators. They tell you what happened, but not how you got there. And if you look at things like where hotels tend to go wrong with something like paid search, most hotels are using an attribution model with their agency, and I'm using attribution model in air quotes, right? That says we need to get a 5-to-1 or a 6-to-1 return on paid search, which they often can't do on things like unbranded terms. Those numbers are tough to hit. But some of those unbranded terms often lead to later reservations. There was a study a couple years ago from, I think it was from Calabria, but it showed that guests who start on a property website convert, book direct only about 60% of the time. And guests who start on an OTA book on the OTA about 94% of the time, 95% of the time. I don't remember the exact number, but low 90s. But if you put that another way, guests who don't start on your site never book direct, right? The difference between them starting in an OTA is at best you might get a booking 7% of the time direct versus 60% if they actually start on your website. And if you're not tracking those leading indicators of what's actually bringing people in that turn into reservations, though you don't see it on those specific search terms, you're actually missing out on direct revenue and growing your business. So this is really a cool way to look at it. And again, we're giving away one of the secrets right here, but that's okay.
Do you think, Tim, that those 90% that are booking on the OTA, what percentage of them, do you have any sense, are actually booking at your property or to another?
When I said at best 7%, it's well below that, right? One of the reasons the OTAs are evil, one of the reasons Google is evil, right, is not because they're doing anything wrong, but it's because it's the place where all your competition lives too.
Yeah.
So, if you're one of the 10 blue links, or you're one of the 10 people on the first page of, Expedia or something like that, maybe you get a shot at that person 1 time out of 10 out of the 7% that might actually come to you. So the numbers are really not in your favor, not because they're bad guys, but because there's a variety of items on the shelf for people to choose from, and you're only going to be that one, a segment of a segment of a segment.
I'm sorry, Tim. Did you just say that Google is not evil? I'm glad what?
What I said specifically was that's not the reason Google is evil.
Okay, all right. Okay. You're right.
Keep in mind too, this also speaks to the fact that as COVID hit and everything got shut down, one of the really good arguments that could be made during that time was not to shut down your digital marketing, your pay-per-click. Because what you're talking about, OTA Insights, is at a market level and getting all that data in there. But thinking even as a property level, you just shut down your pay-per-click, you shut down your meta search, let's say, whatever the case may be. Now you have no data. Within Google in particular, you've got your eligible impressions data. Well, how do you know when the market's recovering? It's very easy. Watch those eligible impressions go up, right? That's a key indicator, folks. But if you've shut off all your campaigns, you've got nothing.
Even worse, you've got nothing, and you did it at a time when a lot of the OTAs stopped bidding on those terms, and the cost for that stuff actually went down dramatically. Exactly. So you're actually not bidding at a time when it's much more affordable to actually do it.
Everybody forgets it's still an auction at the end of the day, and if nobody else is bidding, you're going to get it at bottom dollar.
Right, but I mean, but that makes sense from an investment perspective. You should always pile on to the most popular investment and completely run away when everyone else runs away. That's how all the most wealthy people in the world.
It's actually one of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes of all time, and it's a mindset that we use in digital all the time, and I think it's brilliant what Ricardo's saying here. Is he said, in my house we like hamburgers, and when the price of hamburger goes down, we rejoice, and when the price of hamburger goes up, we weep, right? And yet that's exactly the opposite of how most people actually invest their marketing dollars. Wow, paid search is really popular right now. We should do that. No, that's when the cost is super high. That's when you want to look for something else, right? So
But you know what? It's the smart thing to do, but when you're in pain because you have no money coming in,
of course,
you have to, maintain the property first, maybe pay a few employees first, and you have to make tough choices. So especially when you don't even know when you're opening.
No, for sure. And it's one of those things where obviously you have to find a balance. I would, I said a minute ago that the OTAs are evil, right? The OTAs aren't evil. What's evil is that we depend on them for too much a share of our business, but I have hotels in places, and I'm sure everybody on this call does, where at times of the year, they're the best thing in the world, because when demand is super low, they're going to aggregate demand in a way that you're not going to find a lot of other places, right? And that's true of a lot of this. But I think what Ricardo's talking about is, where do you get the data that tells you, okay, where do we want to put our emphasis right now so that we're actually harvesting the demand that exists in the most economical way possible? So, Ricardo, if I can ask a question, if you could turn that into, or talk about, what are the sorts of things, without giving away the secret sauce, but what are the sorts of things, you're paying attention to or that you're thinking about from a predictive perspective?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tim. And before I answer it, I think it's really for digital marketing tools like this one, they are really supporting and validating the strategies in digital marketing. Because sometimes you're seeing a hotel, look, I think we want to do this or that, or maybe we're seeing this pattern of shopping, and maybe hotel's okay, but should I trust this? Okay, I'm not really secure doing the strategies. And like in marketing side, we are checking between other stuff I'm going to answer in a while, but we're checking flight searches, but we're also checking, okay, what's the length of stay pattern of those flights? When are people coming in and out of the market on that specific day of the week or that specific day? So that validates a lot of strategies on digital marketing. And again, we show different demand levels, so high demand period and low demand period. And that comes what Tim was saying, which is, okay, we're forecasting on, let's say, the next 3 weeks or 3 weeks of August, really low demand. Maybe the values of SEO and paying clicks are lower on that because there's low demand on the market. Maybe you want to invest on that specific time frame, because even on a low demand, you may be more competitive than you are normally. So again, we're, as OTAIn side, we had a rate shopping solution, parity solution, and a BI solution. Majority focus in sales and revenue management, but now we're trying to open that really to marketing teams, because again, this can really be a supportive of digital marketing companies and digital marketing strategies in itself. And answering your question, Tim, really, we look at now for this project, really billions of data points, but in summary, we're looking at flight searches. So the flight searches for that market and the business origin in terms of country. So not just the amount of flight searches for that day, but which countries are searching that market, and also which length of stay they're staying. We're looking at online searches, so OTAs, meta searches, the brand.com, which we integrate with. We're checking all those searches in that market. We're looking at what events and holidays are happening, if there's a holiday in that city or that country in that day, if there's any big event, even small events, because we look at the vast majority of events. We're looking at searches at alternative accommodation, and we're looking at the pricing, and also a new concept we're trying to bring, which we call smart concept, which is what's the pricing strategy of a huge amount of competitors, not just those 4 or 5 competitors you normally say they are your competitors. Let's say if you're giving deep discounts on a specific day or a specific week, probably your normal competitors on that week are not going to be the same, because if you're giving deep discounts, you're now competing with a different set of hotels. So we're trying to capture that based on pricing strategy, because we're searching on our data. We're looking at, okay, which the customers that are shopping your hotel, which hotels are also shopping during their customer journey. So again, I can't give the secret sauce, but in summary, that's the sources we're looking at right now.
So who are you targeting this particular data set towards? Is it towards digital marketers? Is it towards hotel, revenue directors, or is it kind of both? And follow-up question, how is the information presented and how is it usable?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tristan. Yeah, I would say both, because I think that's really important also, information for revenue managers to, again, validate their forecast and help them forecast in an uncertain scenario that we're facing in, but also, I think, really relevant information for marketing and digital marketing teams. Because again, if you look at flight searches, you're looking at really early stage of demand. That means that you have time to decide and act on your strategies. And because we're bringing length of stay and business origin, you can combine all those stuff with other information from, again, a digital marketing standpoint and be more assertive in your strategies. So it is really shown in a clean dashboard. I've shown a small sneak peek here. I can share the screen again, just really quick. This would be a screen of Market Insight. Okay, so this is a print screen of Market Insight. So we would show the heat map of the city, because we don't want to just say to a hotel, look, your city or your market is having high demand on that day, or low demand or medium demand. But because the hotel is inserted in the city environment, we want to show him, okay, your hotel is located here, but there's a lot of demand happening maybe in this area of the city. In this case, the competitors here, and in the light blue, that's what we call the smart comp set. They can change every day based on search patterns and pricing strategies. But let's say if you were, let's say in this example, the hotel was maybe here in Upper West Side, but there was a lot that demanded here in Lower Manhattan. So he could say, okay, I can expect to maybe have a higher occupancy than my competitors, just because the demand in my area is lower than other areas of the city. So we're going to show him also the flight patterns. You can see here, okay, the overall number of shoppings for that day, which countries are shopping, and the average length of stay. We're going to show the overall searches in hotels for you to see, okay, this is the amount of searches hotels are having online for that day, and the amount of searches your hotel's having, because you can see, okay, I'm doing a strong marketing campaign for that day or for that week, for that period. Is that paying? And I'm being visible, I'm having a high number, and you can benchmark against your competitors that information. And we would show you a demand calendar, which is, you can easily spot high and lower demand days, and we circle here what we call opportunities, because we want to help hotels we don't want hotels or marketing teams to look at every day in the next 365 days. So what we do is we look at the pricing strategy for the comp set and the hotel, and we relate that to the demand level and say, look, maybe on those circle days, your price is too low because we're forecasting a high demand, or maybe your price is too high because we're forecasting a low demand period and all your competitors are giving heavier discounts than you are. So maybe have a look into it. So, and we also show the evolution of that, because we don't want to just show a picture of how demand is looking, let's say I'm using this example for September 6th, but we also want to show you for the past 10 weeks or for the past 2 months, week by week, how this demand for this specific date, September 6th, has evolved. Is the demand growing week by week? So once we scroll here, what we have down here, what we call demand scroll bar, the heat map and all the information here would be updated. So you would be able to see the flight searches from last week and what's the flight searches today. Maybe what were the flight searches on average for September 6th, 10 weeks ago, and what they are today. And also the heat map would be updated in terms of changing colors and scale, demand scale colors, to really show you maybe the average demand of the city is the same, but internally in the city, the demand is shifting, okay? So maybe, let's say you have a big event that was probably, first of all, scheduled to happen on this area, but now that event, for some reason, because something happened in the venue or something else, that changed to a different part of the city, maybe the demand will shift along with that event if it's a relevant event happening in the city.
Very cool.
I'd like to point out that for those of you who are saying this data has always been available from digital marketing, that nobody but OTA Insight has bothered to share this with any revenue managers so that we can use it to make strategic decisions. So thank you, OTA Insight, for making this into a revenue management tool.
I, Lily, would like to push back on that. We absolutely share that with the rev management teams and our clients.
Yes, but you are kind of a bit of a anomaly in many ways, Tim.
Well, I think most of the I'm not going to fight you on that one, that's for sure. I think most of the folks on this show would definitely agree. One of the things we've railed about on the show for a long time are the barriers, are the silos between marketing, rev management, et cetera, and operations. And I think that's certainly something we all agree about. Right?
And I think that this really helps bridge the gap. And also, as always, OTA Insight has come out with a product that's easy to understand. Anybody at any level within the organization can understand how to use it. It's easy to navigate. It's a reasonable price point. So just for the record, I don't get paid by OTA Insight. I'm just a fan. So I know, Ricardo, that you have a couple other things going on this morning. So I know you might have to jump off, but just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this data. And a thank you to OTA Insight for looking into their crystal ball and knowing that we would need this exact tool at this exact moment.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, quick question, Ricardo. Does it have an API? And can I
but
build one and I can make your product better?
Yeah, that's
Such a backhanded compliment. My God. Build an API and I'll make it work right. Wow, Tris.
Well, I'm only joking.
Because we want to be open to the market in any ways. So we've heard a lot of the hotels, the early adopters, because they have RMS system and they would love to see that data inside the RMS systems. But they're also a big part in terms of digital marketing where this could be combined with other metrics in other environments. So definitely that's something we're looking into. And about what Lily said in terms of revenue management and marketing teams, one thing we really discuss a lot in OTA Insight is how can our tools help in a cross collaboration between departments? Because we know revenue managers, they have their own tools, their RMS systems that no one knows how to pilot that. It's not being a revenue managers. You have marketing teams that have their own marketing partners, agencies, and companies, and they're looking at different data. And probably there's now really cross collaboration. People are doing their own business. That's right. So that's one of the concepts also behind our marketing side, which is how can we put those two areas on the table and look at the same tool and make decisions collectively. And Lily, thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure. I'm definitely gonna give your feedback and your kind words for our product and engineering team, because they really worked for a year and a half, day and night, to put this awesome product on live. And really, sorry I can't say more because I'm loving the discussion, and it's really fun and really exciting to be here. But I'll definitely listen to the rest later on, and probably listen to some of the other series, because I really love to participate in, and count on us on any other sessions. It's a pleasure to participate, and thank you.
Yeah, Ricardo, if people want to find out more about OTA Insight or connect with you, where can they go?
Yeah, so we have our website. I'm going to shoot a message in the chat here, which is OTAinsight.com. There we have a specific session now for Market Insight. I'm also at LinkedIn if people want to reach out. We have an email also, which is info@OTAinsight.com. It's a general email everyone receives in the company, and we will be glad to reply. I'm going to just post those information here on our website. On the chat.
Ricardo, thanks so much for joining us, especially so last minute. We really appreciate it. This is a really, really interesting product, and I think, like Tim said, it's great that you guys have made the effort to, simplify it and, make it something that anyone can grab, even if they don't work with Tim Peter.
Or, to be fair, Fuel Travel or Screen Pilot or other really smart folks who've been doing this stuff. But yeah, no, this is awesome. Very cool.
And Ricardo, one last request before you head out, please just X out of the window and do not hit the big red stop button, which will take
just close your browser. Don't hit any buttons.
Thank you, Dad. I'm just going to close my browser. Correct?
That'll work.
Perfect.
Guys, have a good session. Thank you again for the invite. It was really a pleasure. Be safe, and we'll be in touch in the future. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I loved that he said that the comp set changes for various times and situations based on what your pricing strategy for that time. It's so true. I always found that comp set was just very rigid and random in a way, that we're not really like those other hotels. So I think that that's a great approach.
Well, and I think where a lot of that comes from is the old school rate shopping.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, sure, in old school rate shopping, you wanted to see how buildings were pricing themselves, during any specific time. That's to scratch a very specific itch. The problem is that mentality of comp set has been applied across every decision, it seems, to where you're sticking to the building and not, in marketing, you should be focusing on who's competing for the same traveler as you, right? Which, depending on what day it is, depending on where events are, depending on any number of things, the collection of properties that are competing for the same traveler as you is a much wider band than the narrow band of properties you wanted to watch pricing behavior on.
I think as an industry in general, we love our certainty, even if it's false certainty. And so to be fair, you do have to have something consistent to measure yourself against, right? That's where star comp sets come in and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I totally agree that comp set is really very fluid depending on what's going on in the city. And I love that about this tool, that you can really target in and see, okay, maybe for a while I need to be following this other one. Or maybe it invalidates your whole comp set to begin with just when you start looking at the data. But as a whole, I mean, it's exhibiting now in the people who are making their revenue managers run 3 different forecasts every week until they're happy with the outcome. But you're not going to be happy with the outcome right now, or you're making your revenue manager lie. So everybody's just grasping at certainty and trying to make the world black and white when it really is not a black and white place.
Remember the old days when you charge $1 for every $1,000 it took to design each room?
Right.
I don't remember the exact equation, but I think that might have been it. It's crazy.
It's funny. This is a great comment. I want to go back to something Lily said a moment ago, because this is all of a piece that right now is a great opportunity. We want certainty, obviously. We want to make sure we're not, grasping at straws. Also, now is a great time to look at what's working and what isn't and say, okay, where am I going to continue to put my efforts, 1, to get through the current crisis, and 2, for where we want to be in the longer term. And also say, these are the things we used to do that we need to stop doing. They don't make sense. They're not going to make sense for the way the world is right now, and they're probably not going to make sense when the world gets back to whatever a normal looks like in the future. I was very lucky. I talked about working with rev management very closely and the like. I was incredibly fortunate. I happened to join what is today Wyndham right after 9/11. And my office, I was the guy responsible for digital and the like, and my office happened to be next to the guy who was responsible for rev management. And we became pals, and we'd go to lunch every day, and we'd have conversations all the time and things like that. And I was shocked that a couple of years later when I found out that not every hotel company worked that way, where we were continually collaborating and the like. It wasn't by design. It wasn't because anybody told us to. It was because we happened to have the offices next door to one another, So it's that kind of thing of saying, if today your marketing team and your rev management team aren't tightly integrated in terms of the data that they're looking at, the data that they're sharing, and how their success is measured, you need to fix that now because you're not going to be in a good position for the longer term.
Maybe
Still a
a
big
structure.
triangular desk where the sales, marketing, and revenue people have to face each other all day long. It's kind of like the shirt that your parents used to put.
You can't do that. You can't do that now. COVID-19, everybody have to wear face masks. You can't do it. It's just not possible.
Just space the desk 6 feet away.
Adele, you started to say.
Well,
Now, speaking to that concept,
maybe
go ahead, Adele.
all companies should have a structure where one person who's knowledgeable about all of it should oversee revenue and sales and marketing.
Chief Revenue Officer. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah.
and that speaks to that comp set question too, because what ends up happening is a lot of times comp sets are aspirational. I'm a 2-star hotel and I say my comp set is a 4-star hotel. Now, I'm going to contradict myself here just a moment though. It might be if that is the guest that you're trying to target. If you're thinking that, hey, that 4-star hotel guest, maybe they're traveling on a lower budget and they would be interested in a 2-star hotel. But it could also be the other way around too. I'm a 4-star hotel and I'm thinking that 2-star hotel guest wants something better than what they had. Then maybe that is my target, right? So it all centers around understanding your goals. What is your objective and why are you targeting that specific demographic? And like Adele was saying, if you had one person that was overseeing all of that, that would be more in sync with each other.
Right. And understand your goals should always change too.
Absolutely.
So, saying that it's aligned with your goals because your goals don't change all year is not the way out. Your goals should constantly be changing as every day goes by. You have your core big rock goals that are always the same. But when you then break that down to tactical level, your goals are going to change as your realities change. And that's not just a negative reality change. As you achieve success in getting a guest up market or down market, and that cements itself as part of your strategy, then you're moving on to, okay, the next phase of those goals is, all right, if I brought a guest up market, how do I get them to spend more money on property? How do I, so this idea of, the tethering to your goals, I just want to caution everyone that's listening to this that your goals should be dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
But are we not thinking? Are we not still thinking old school here as well? And you're absolutely right there, Ed, about the goals constantly changing. But we're talking about let's create another position to manage 2 departments. Do we not think that these departments are ultimately going to be merging at some point in the future? They should.
But Chris, you have to think about the current structure of most hotels is revenue management and marketing actually are they're not the silo. The silo starts way above. They actually answer to different entire sections of the business. In a lot of cases, marketing is answering to the management company or answering to a completely different business entity. Yeah. And revenue management often is answering up to GM,
the asset manager or the GM.
Manager.
Yeah.
So the silos actually start with the businesses the people actually work for that have competing interests.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Right? Do we not think? I mean, I'm asking crystal ball time here, but I mean, surely the next generation of people that are coming through. I mean, look at the article Griffin just posted there about millennials choosing hotels based on tech. We're going to have a much more tech savvy or internet ready generation coming through who are going to be the next people who are going to be moving into these senior positions. It's difficult to say because you're talking business structure, but you've got.
I saw Tim moving in the screen and it just killed me. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want to be. You don't want
to be the cynic, but I
don't want to be the cynic. But I mean, if you think, whenever we meet people, so I think everybody on here knows I do a lot of work with folks outside the hospitality industry as well as folks inside the hospitality industry, and it's amazing when you have conversations with people about the trifurcated nature of hospitality, right? If I can coin a phrase of there's somebody who owns the building. There's somebody who runs the building, and there's somebody who sells the building, when we think about a brand or the like. And those can often be 3 entirely separate entities. Most people who don't work in travel and don't work in the hospitality industry, their head explodes when you have that conversation. They can't even imagine that that's the reality that we live in very, very commonly. And as long as that stays the norm, I think that a lot of the challenges we run into where ad management is responsible to a GM and an asset manager, and marketing is responsible to the GM who maybe isn't part of the asset management company, you turn into a very different reality there. So
but that doesn't mean you can't accomplish this, but you can.
No.
Of
course not. Of course not.
Accomplish this personally.
Of course you can.
This is the interesting thing. This doesn't need to be a top-down edict.
I would argue that it can't be.
But I agree. And in most cases, the hotels are structured in a way that it's impossible to have it be a top-down edict. But that doesn't mean you, in the position that you're in, can't cross that line and collaborate. And it would be smart for you because both sides win.
Right.
When you
That's exactly right.
You become more successful. You become better at what you do. If you're the marketer in that dynamic, it cements your management company. If you're the revenue manager, it makes your asset management company look better because the asset's performing better. So it definitely is worth the effort on the in the trenches at your level to make this happen, even if your org isn't structured in a way where it's told to you that it should happen.
So have you ever had the conversation, Tim, about OTAs and e-commerce? Because same as yourself, I have clients outside of the hospitality industry, and when you say that I run an e-commerce platform where I sell my product through my website, but I give it to another company to do exactly the same thing, and they do it for a commission. They don't get it. I understand it's a totally
just say Amazon.
Totally different sale.
Exactly. People who know Amazon actually do get it. If they don't know Amazon, they don't. They're like, wait, what?
Let's not kid ourselves. If any of us in our business had someone we could go to shore up a month that fell short because any number of things happened and you fell out of line of your revenue, and you knew you could just turn to someone and they would top it up. And it'd be a little bit more expensive in some cases. Anyone would kill for that to exist.
By the way, it's actually one of our core strategies, and I give this away to people all the time. It's the way you should use OTAs, right? I have people in warm weather markets where August is tough for them, right? Because people aren't going to places that are hot and humid in August if they can avoid it. It's a great time to get OTA business because you're probably not going to fill those rooms any other way.
Right.
With the over-reliance, so that's the issue, is when you're so reliant upon the OTA.
Correct.
That's where it becomes an issue. And there's too many properties that I've come across where that is the case, where there's virtually
zero. and it's zero cost because they don't write a check.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's where
I apologize. I've been talking a lot today, but I've been trying to get a lot in quickly because I'm actually leaving now. but I'm going to tee up a question now that we have Tammie here and Lily.
Hang on a second, Tim. I didn't realize your contract was on a word said basis. My contract isn't like that. And by the way, I haven't got a contract. I'm not getting paid, so I need to have a word with Loren.
No, it's I have to get a certain number of steps in every day, and this is like steps. So, but it's great seeing you all. I want to tee up a question, especially with Tammie here now and Lily and Adele, as we're talking about this, how, you work with properties and on property every day, and they're like, how do you break down some of those silos, or how do you encourage folks to break down those silos and work with, across the team functions more effectively? Because I think that's a really important thing for people to be aware.
If I were going to open a hotel or a hotel company today, I would make a chief revenue officer, and I'd make the GMs and the director of sales and director of revenue and director of marketing report that way. Because I really think that I really don't think a lot of cases with the general manager, it has the expertise in the digital or revenue field or whatever in order to have those people bring to them. I'm sorry. Was that the wrong thing to say?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
But that's what I would.
I like to take the Nike approach. Just do it. If there's one thing that I'm learning through this crisis, because now all of a sudden it's happening organically in companies where they've been striving to do this for years, because people are realizing they don't have all of the answers in their department. And that's what we all need to realize. So if I wanted to be an annoying leader of multiple teams, like let's say I'm a GM where everybody's reporting up to me, then every time one of those disciplines came to me with an action plan or a strategy or something, I would say, oh, that's interesting. What did the other two guys say about this?
Mm-hmm.
Not accept any strategy until they get buy-in from all three departments and everybody's on the same page, because you really have to have that pushback. Otherwise, if you're accepting things one at a time, then they're just going to continue to do things one at a time. So sometimes you just have to say, okay, starting today, you're all on the same page. Figure it out.
Yeah, at the luxury hotel section, if we have a problem, which is a hole in our occupancy that we can see coming up ahead, we say, okay, what do we need to solve this? Do we need a special rate? Maybe we need a package. That package should have a press release. That package should be on social media. That package should be on our website. Shall we share it with the OTAs or not? We will have an email blast about it. We're going to have the salespeople make knocks on doors and tell people about it. Do we need to send a letter? Whatever, bring people in for lunch and tours, discussing that particular thing. It's a holistic approach as opposed to segmented. It just seems logical. Why wouldn't it?
It's going to have to be a seriously well-disciplined person to be able to manage all of that, I think. That would be such a strategic appointment. You got that appointment wrong, it could go very disastrously wrong for the hotel.
Tammie,
to add more complication to all of that. Oh, sorry.
I find it easy, but maybe it's because it's smaller hotels.
again, because you're just doing it, Adele.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and Adele, the structure of your properties, you don't have an asset manager and a management company, right? It's owned and operated, right? So, I mean, in an owned and operated hotel, your dynamic is so much easier than what the majority of hotels out there are. And I mean, when you think about, you want to add even more complexity to it, add a brand as well. So you have a management company, an asset manager, and a brand, all with different goals, different stakes in the game, and honestly, even different KPIs on how they make money.
Different time horizons.
Yeah.
I disagree with some of what you said there, Ed. I think the reason why it works is because it's Adele, and I will do as I'm told if Adele tells me to do it.
That's true. I mean, to be fair, you are correct.
Can we just take a quick pause? Because, Tammie, I think there's a problem with your audio. I see you trying to speak up, but I'm not hearing anything.
And by the way, folks, I do have to run. It is, as ever, a pleasure seeing you.
Thank
See you, Tim.
Stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you next time, all right?
Bye, Tim.
Bye now.
Well, nope, still no audio, Tammie.
We'll do it through the medium of mine.
Yes. Sorry, I had to duck out there. You know, to the magical wonders of technology, my lunch was being delivered. You gotta love that, where you can order lunch and get it without having to speak to a single person. With someone like with the last name like StOnge, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So while we're waiting now, Tammie, we still can't hear you. While we're waiting for Tammie to get audio, do we want to look at some of the Robert Cole provided topics today?
Is it the right time of the show?
It is 12:24. I know we do. We still have an hour to pontificate before we get to anything of.
I think, Adele, you're bringing up the McKinsey article earlier, right?
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed that read.
Yes, I was very excited to hear one thing that they said. Let me just see. Here it is. No, this is the CNN article. No. Oh, no, wait, I'll look for it. Talk amongst yourselves.
While she's doing that, I mean, the thing that I loved about their article is, they really focused on something I think a lot of people forget when they're in the trenches, in the detail of their day-to-day, which is the purpose of travel is to build memories. I mean, that's really what we do. And that's not done by a lot of the things that get overly focused on in this industry. And this is the competing nature of how a travel business operates of, the owner wants real estate KPIs in a lot of cases, where the actual business is in the business of making memories. I thought that was an interesting kind of take from a company that is a consultancy company.
Absolutely. Let me just see. They actually quantify the benefits of having putting the guest experience first, which is just not what I was expecting from them. One moment. I'm still going. And I like this comment as well. Giving customers more choice and control. I think that that is just so key. Everybody wants to feel like, the reason they love their iPhone or whatever it is that they can choose their playlist, they can choose what they want to hear on watch on Netflix, and they can choose their hotel experience even within picking between the very unique brands that there may be out there, and then individualizing it themselves. That's certainly very important. This is what I wanted to see. It says, listen to customers and take an agile approach. We have found that companies that surpass their peers in customer experience design tend to share a set of features. They have agile cross-functional teams, that's what we were just talking about, that develop and iterate with end users and deliver seamlessly across touch points. Companies that deliver at the highest level across those teams recognize real returns, outperforming their peers by nearly 3 to 1 in revenue and 1.5 to 1 in return to shareholders. In this time of great uncertainty and fluid demand, it will be more important than ever to listen to travelers and understand their rapidly evolving needs. I just love that.
Yep.
Who would ever think to ask your customer what motivates them, what they want to do, what they would enjoy?
You don't need to do that.
I mean, you're better off not asking a single question of your customer until after they've transacted with you. And the question should only be related to your TripAdvisor rating.
You know what? If TripAdvisor didn't exist,
then you would never ask.
You know what? It was an impetus, but even if it didn't exist, reviews will always exist.
Agreed.
Word of mouth has always existed.
Yep.
So it will always be the right thing to do.
I agree. And I'm being sarcastic for those of you who have never watched the show before. The most important thing you possibly can do at any phase of the buyer's journey is attempt to have a conversation with the people who are interested in being your customer or have been your customer, because you don't need to guess. People are willing to tell you what they want, what they find interesting. They can make your job a lot easier by understanding what the needs and motivations are of the people you're trying to work with.
And I was talking with somebody the other day on this very topic, and they were saying, we're excited because we're back up to about 40% occupancy right now, but, what are you hearing? Because I'm conducting a lot of research right now with hoteliers to understand pain points and things like that. And they're like, well, what are you hearing? Like, these people who are starting to travel now, what is it that they want? And I said, well, you said you're at 40%, right? Well, yeah. I said, why don't you ask? There are people who've chosen you. Figure out why.
And to be fair, Loren talks about this a lot. He hasn't talked about it in a while. But, think back to the old school days of the GM who was playing Lounge Lizard and was just interacting with guests, understanding, where'd you come from? What made you decide to come here? And that you don't need to stand in a room anymore to do that. You can design that in across the entire journey. And even pre-booking, you can intelligently figure out what people want, why they're interested in your area, because knowing that can help you attract more people to be interested in your area. It can help you speak better to others if you understand what the draw is for the people who naturally, decided to come your way.
And there's so many data points that are available now. Sorry, Dean. There's so many data points available now that you can, there's more information available to you than there has ever been. Throw in, and we're gone full circle now, back to Ota Insight, and you've got a tool that's designed to give you exactly what we're just talking about there, but in physical data. You're going to know what airline they could potentially come in on, because that's the majority of the airlines that are coming into your destination at that point. You're going to know where they're coming from, or the connecting points, the connecting hubs that they've come from. There's so much information that you can now take even further than the Lounge Lizard, just where you're from, or I'm from wherever. Well, actually, how did you get here? Well, we can figure that out, and we can map for that.
Let's do a real quick check here. Tammy, make a noise if. Hey!
Really quick to Tristan's point, though, you're right. We have so much more data now, but I almost think that can be part of the problem too, right? There's so much data that people don't know how to use it. And they get overwhelmed by it, right? So so things like Ota Insight, where now, to Tim's point earlier when he was talking about, hey, I've been doing this manually for years. You just automated the whole thing. The more that we can automate data, the more that we can figure out the attribution modeling, the how to pull this in and how to intelligently use it, the better off hotels are going to be. But
the more you can turn raw data into actionable insights. I mean, really, that's part of the problem is a lot of the BI that's been put in the hands of hotels is raw data. It's not true business intelligence. It's just data. And unless you're incredibly skilled at, what it takes to move someone from one data marker to another, you can't work off of raw data easily. You need to be able to analyze it and understand what it's telling you, and not get caught in the trap of, oh, it's telling me this, but it also could be telling me that, and it could be telling me this, and you get paralyzed from analyzing it. And so, that's one of the big challenges is we don't need more data. The hotel industry needs more insight. They need more understanding.
And I think that's it's kind of, we're crossing topics again here as well. I think with the Ota Insight, that's where it just falls tiny little bit short for me. It's a brilliant tool, as you said there, and it's a tool that we don't have. But that tool could be so much better if it was then actionable. And there's ways that you can do that by taking a data industry, specialist that is OTA, and then merging that with other industries such as digital marketing. That tool, and I pitched this to OTA probably about 3 years ago, that tool, if they had it back then, could automate and control your digital marketing accounts. So, for example, if you're seeing that that you've got a shortfall on a certain day, a certain week coming up in the next however many weeks, you can put more digital marketing spend into your marketing channels, accounting for lead time and funnel that's all in there for those particular dates. And if you're full, you throttle it back. Because at the moment, what we do is we apply digital marketing spend virtually on a linear basis. We've got $3,000. I'm dividing it by 30 days, and that's my daily spend. And we're then segmenting that up between Facebook and meta search and this and the other. By having access to that data, that's the point I was making before. I think that it's to the point that you're making, Tammie. We can really truly start to make an influence upon connecting this data and actually making it actionable, and then being a lot smarter with how we're targeting markets. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to Ricardo and say that point to him, and which is why I want the API.
Yeah. You know what, when we're talking about listening to the customers and we're collecting data, generally we're talking about collecting data directly from the customers online or on a review or something like that. And what we're completely missing is, I think, the most critical point, which is having a way to enter the feedback that the employees are getting and have them be able to input that information into the semantic analysis so that it reaches the top decision-making people and is included in that conversation. Even a wonderful tool like Revenate doesn't have a way for the data from the comments of the front desk saying this person had a problem because such and such, you know, and this is what I did, but we really need to dig down and find the problem, the root cause of the problem, not the, you know, not what he was actually complaining about, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And they don't track that, and that. Your most important thing is the person is standing in front of you and the person is going, yeah, wow, I really empathize with you. But they're not digging down, find the root cause and fixing it.
Do you think, Adele, that the reason for that is that most hotels in the management structure that we talked about before and having multiple different, you know, layers and this, that, and the other in different companies, do you think it's because they're just not geared up to focus on the hospitality in the hospitality industry, which is something that I know that you put right at the center of what you do, you know, TripAdvisors and reviews. You know, we've worked together before and I know how fantastic the reviews are for all of the library collection. But that comes because you've made a line and drawn a line in the sand and said, this is going to be important to us. Do you think it's perhaps that other hotels either struggle to do that or can't do that because there's too many blockers?
I think that the reason is a mindset. That this is my hotel. This is my bricks and mortar around me. I can't make it the Mandarin Oriental. I can't make it a Rosewood or a Belmont. So I guess these are the kind of reviews that we get. And even some hotels that have really incredible names, you'd be surprised, and you'll find them with very average reviews.
Yeah.
You know,
I think part of, like, Adele, to your specific example, it actually is you could easily accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. The problem is even though it's easy, it would be incredibly expensive. And that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It's incredibly difficult to sell someone who doesn't understand what the value proposition that will build. And it's not a value proposition that you can say, it's definitely this activity that's going to do that, because you could easily, in a CRM window, record interactions in a straight open field narrative and then apply AI over that to actually gain insights out of it. That is incredibly simple to do. It's just also incredibly expensive.
A lot of that is about changing the culture as well.
To change the culture at all.
Yeah.
Very expensive. It's the most cost-effective thing you can do to increase your revenue.
Agreed. But the initial investment in that's your hump. Like, it's not even the investment of changing the culture to record it or anything like that. It's going to be, hey, step one is we need a way to collect, we need a way to train, we need a way to analyze and report. And then step two is we need to figure out what the heck are we going to do with it, which has its own set of investment and thought process. In a perfect world, yeah, you could productize that very easily.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, because step one actually has to be give them something to talk about and not something bad to talk about. Because you can go to a lot of hotels out there. Think about your typical cookie cutter hotel, right? You go in, your check-in process is seamless. And today, maybe even by a kiosk, right? We want the no contact check and everything. You get there, your room was clean, the Wi-Fi worked good, you slept good, everything was fine. But how many people write a review saying everything was fine? Nobody, right? You have to be able to give them something to talk about, or they can't talk about it.
But even
right?
that, you say that that's difficult. That's not difficult because you can design.
It's difficult to train.
But again, you could productize the injection of, hey, you can inject one of these conversations. You could actually productize, because a lot of these people are standing in front of a computer screen. You could productize injecting specific questions at specific points of interaction that are not skewing negative, because that's one of the mistakes a lot of review structure has to it, is it focuses on what could we have done better, how did we fail you, and you can actually get the same insight without asking the question negatively and without putting someone in the mind frame of, you're asking for me to tell you something that was wrong, so let me look back through my recollection of my experience through that lens of something was wrong. You can productize all of that. And this is where I was saying, functionally, you can solve for the human issue. You can even solve for tracking an employee's interpretation of the interaction over enough interactions to actually adjust of if they skew too positive or skew too negative in their telling of the feedback. All of that product-wise is super easily solvable. Like it would be one of the most simplistic products to build because it's all off-the-shelf architecture. The problem is all that architecture would be incredibly expensive.
But you know what? There's already revenue management tools. So all you'd have to do is take the line from what the front desk person put in the comments field about that customer interaction that was, you asked them, how was your stay? Or, when somebody comes to the desk, is there anything I can do for you? You're taking that information, especially if there was a problem that needs to be fixed, and pulling the report from the day from that field, and just have somebody enter it into their reputation management system. But there's not.
But the problem with that is how was your stay?
There's no function for that.
Is as bad of a question as what could we have done better, or was there anything wrong? Because how was your stay has turned into almost a greeting. Just like when, a lot of people, instead of saying hello, say, how's it going? They're not really asking how's it going. And the person that they say it to also knows they're not asking how's it going. It's a greeting.
And they say the same thing back to you. So you say the same word. It's like saying hello.
Yeah.
And yet, sometimes they will tell you that information.
Sometimes, but you actually, if you designed the questions and then measured the responses, you could fine-tune the questions to a point where you could actually get amazing insight that would have very clear actions off of it. Because a general question like, how was your stay, is not going to get a response from a large amount of people to a granular level. They're not going to think of, everything was amazing except this one tiny thing that did not at all ruin my stay, but was friction existed. Where if you were really going to do this right, you would find a way to actually identify friction points in the guest journey. Mm-hmm. And that, again, is achievable. Like all of this, I could chart this product in a matter of days to a pretty easy level. The problem is it would probably end up being something that an average hotel would be paying thousands of dollars a month to have, and it would easily drive massive benefit to them. The problem is it's slight improvement here, slight improvement here, slight improvement here, slight improvement here. So all that massive benefit is just incremental improvements across all these different lines. It would be really hard to keep a hotel dedicated to that level of service, I think.
Well, that comes down to leadership and management, though, isn't it? I mean, you could say the same for any business. It does. If you've got an ethos and a mindset, it comes from bottom up and top down at the same time. You've all got to be bought into having that. And I've been unfortunate to work in some environments where there's very little leadership at the top, or certainly no ethos coming from the leadership, or the ethos that is coming is one that I just don't agree with, and I think is outright wrong. Then you get unhappiness in the organization. That leads to, poor quality of service. It's slightest little things here, there, and everywhere. Leads to communication breakdown between departments, and before you know it, you're in that spin, that spiral.
Yeah.
If you believe that, like McKinsey says, that you can have 3 times the revenue because you are listening to your customers, then you can DIY it in a way that is easy and not expensive technology-wise, as long as the reputation, even if they didn't cooperate and let you enter in the front desk comments, not just the digitally received comments, then all you'd have to really do is say to the front desk, look, we want to kill it. We really want to be number one. We want to be the kindest, nicest, most wonderful experience that they've ever had. So when somebody comes up to you with a problem, don't just empathize with them. Make sure that is input somewhere where management can take that information and find a solution. And we'll get back to that person that there was this one little thing, it didn't really damage my stay, but it was a friction point. And let them know, you know what, that was a great insight. We really appreciate it. And this is how we've changed the verbiage to make it more clear, or we've, put more communication behind it, or from now on, we're going to put a double check so those things aren't missed, or etc. Very often the solutions are so simple.
Yes.
Yeah. What about from you wouldn't be able to necessarily tie it to a guest, but even a simple start could be like one of those survey form tools, right? So you create a couple toggles, right? Is it customer service? Was it related to product? Right? Some different things. And then Adele, I'm talking to you, I'm complaining about, I don't know, the elevator or whatever. And when I leave, you've taken care of me. You just lie in, there was a complaint about the product at the hotel and it was related to the elevator. And you start to see these get aggregated, and you start to see, hey, these are where our biggest issues are.
You could actually simplify that even more now, thinking about it, where you could create 2 fields, a positive keyword mention and a negative keyword mention, and just ask your team, if anyone brings up anything positive or anything negative, try to give me the main keyword of what it was about, right?
That's all an AI is going to look for in any case.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that would greatly simplify quite a bit, but you'd still have the training issue of the asking, once you're past the first blush of the impact that gives you, getting down to the secret sauce and really becoming well-oiled would require more intelligent questions based off of, what was their body language like? Did they blow you off on the question? And if they did, is there any way you can, potentially still get information out of them without being annoying, right? If you wanted to really take it to a scientific level of once you're past kind of the first level of improvement, could you really get this to a point where you can understand even the real impact on guest satisfaction of certain things that we know hotels struggle with deciding on anyways, like when there's a certain aspect of the hotel that really needs overhaul, but you continue putting it off because you're really not sure how much it's impacting, so it's not an obvious in your face. It's not the pool is gross looking. It's the overall finish of the hallways, right? You could get down to understanding the impact on guest satisfaction down to that scientific of a level, which would help you understand some of the soft stuff that is friction, right? It's not the obvious. It's not your person was rude. You lost my reservation. I waited forever to get into the restaurant. It's not the easy. That's all the easy stuff. The more interesting stuff that you can really get to is what are the things that Apple would look at if they were looking at having a hotel, right? Because they wouldn't look at those big things. Those would be the obvious things they would design around. It's the impact of the aesthetic, the impact of the overall vibe and feel and sound and smell, because those are the things that when you nail those, and I can think of multiple properties that have nailed those things, those are the hard things to continue investing in long term. Once you're over the initial hump of the, hey, we're running at top occupancy, top ADR, how can we get better? Well, that's when you actually have to start going into those things, and you could get that to become a core part of your everyday by building systems to really collect that in an intelligent way. And that's not going to be done by a guest survey. It's things you would need to accomplish by intelligently and understanding how to ask the right questions throughout their stay with you, to not have it be annoying, but also to get the insights you're really looking for.
But it also depends on where you're trying to go with this, because you're almost talking about the pursuit of perfection to a certain point there. Most hotels don't need to get to that level.
That's true. I'll give that.
They're so far behind perfection. All they need to do is exceed expectations of their visitor. That's all it is. That's a 2-star acting like a 2.1 star. Or whatever, just that little bit extra than what I was expecting when I came here. That's what makes the experience.
But Tris, you haven't known me long enough that I am 150%. It's 150% or zero.
Indeed. I just like to say mathematically 150% is impossible for occupancy. It's just, it's not going to work, but okay.
But I think, I know you were joking, Ed, but kind of to the point of, those perfection, what's a perfect stay for me is probably very different than what's a perfect stay for you. So it's also thinking through, how do we make sure that each guest has that perfect experience? Because what I enjoy or what I like as far as my experience is going to be very different than probably everyone else on this call.
Yeah.
And so, so tying that in as well.
I'll give you a perfect example. One of the nicest hotels in Vegas, I absolutely hate because they pump this strong vanilla smell throughout the whole property, and it just makes me sick. So to a lot of people, that's perfect. Vanilla is such a pleasing smell, blah, 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 blah. I can't stand it.
That's so artificial, though, for me, because some of the best hotels I've ever stayed in are the smallest ones, where it's the customer experience. I get a personalized experience. The people who I speak to genuinely care about what I have to say. They're looking out for me when I'm going outside. If I'm on a leisure vacation, I'm walking out and they're handing me an umbrella saying, hey, the weather's going to be bad in, potentially an hour's time. Take an umbrella, look, all of that type of thing. But equally, I also know people will hate that. I know, like Ben, who's not on the show today, he genuinely doesn't want to speak to anybody ever. Even wife and kids. I'm joking. He genuinely that interaction. He loves the tech side of it. So if Apple opened up a hotel, he would stay there and only there forever. So to Tammie,
it's managing. And listen, I'm in between. I want you there when I need you.
Yeah.
But I do not want you pointing out to me constantly that you're there. And that's where I struggle with super luxury, because super luxury to me feels like you're just constantly telling me and making it obvious to me that you're there. And I don't want you to be there. Like, I'm not looking.
It's so funny that you say that, because my first experience at the St. Regis Bell Harbor years ago, I was there for a Starwood training because Starwood was a big fan of scheduling mandatory trainings at the most expensive properties possible. But anyway, I had not been in a super luxury environment prior to that. And I felt uncomfortable the entire time because it was so over the top. Like, they walk you to the elevator, they go up in the elevator with you. Like, sometimes I just want a little privacy. So it was, loved the room and everything. But for me, ultra luxury, it's not a fit.
You know what? My mother used to say something to me that really clarifies that it's not about the opulence. When she was a real estate agent, she said that the young couples who were getting their first home and you show them something basic, they will ooh and ah and just be so excited. As long as it's nice and clean and fresh, they're really great. And even if they can just see the potential in it. And you know what? Another example is I know one hotel, super cool, New York City property, very hip and trendy, was opening on its way up and you know, wired on the top of TripAdvisor, and then they changed management and went down to number 278.
Yep.
Not the bricks and mortar, it's the culture.
It's the people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that it is free. Inspiring people to do the right thing, to listen, to try to solve problems, to make people feel at home.
And hiring the right people is the best cost savings you can have on so many fronts.
And give them the right message.
Hire the right people, have a culture, have a real culture, by the way, not a concocted culture. I hate concocted cultures. You know, have a real culture, a culture of, you know, kindness and hospitality, and make sure your management lives that culture, you know, because that is how it happens. You know, that's how, you know, seeing the GM walking in the parking lot, picking up trash, and, you know, the simple things like that. It's those have more impact on how your employees will act than actually telling them that that's what they should be doing. And, you know, so.
You've got the tech equivalent, haven't you, Ed? Where you'll see all of these jobs that come into the cool, hip, and trendy tech companies, and they've got free beer and a foosball table.
I hate it.
Great, thanks very much. I want to go and work for you for the free beer and the foosball table.
Well, do you know what that tells you about that company? Is the leadership or a-holes?
Yeah,
because if you have to do that stuff to say you have culture. If you have to do that stuff to force the team to want to interact with each other, it means there's something wrong.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I do have to say, though, Ed, the one caveat to that might be in an area like San Francisco, because at this point, so many tech companies have it that I think it becomes almost like a hotel amenity. When everybody else is offering free breakfast and you don't, people aren't going to stay with you. So I think it might be a little bit of a blanket statement to say that every company who offers that has bad leadership. But
it's a warning. I mean, but it is definitely a warning sign. Yeah. There's no question. But I'll even tell you, like, let's use the ones in San Francisco, for example, compared to working at other tech companies, working at a Facebook, working at a Google, working at an Amazon, you are a slave. I mean,
well, and that's why they put all that stuff there, right?
Right, Facebook, because they don't want you to leave
on campus because they want you to do everything there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I'll even use here in Orlando. I'm sure you all know people who work in the executive level of the largest employer in Orlando, and I can tell you, anyone who makes above $100,000 a year for that employer is basically a slave. They are 60 plus hours a week, grinding constantly, cannot have any live-work balance whatsoever, and it's because they built a machine to find the people who see that as their dream. You know, and they're a concocted culture in you know, every single way. Actually, I can say their name, Disney. They I can say their name because I would never work with them because they're a horrible company. But you know, and I personally, through my career, have deprogrammed a number of their employees because they're brainwashed. But it's that fake culture, that false culture. They're a whole nother level of it. But
I do love the irony of this, Ed, because you've got the Avengers on your wall right behind you. Disney film.
Hey, listen, I can hate their culture and love their product all at the same time, and that's what makes them so incredible at what they do.
and annoying at the same time. Yeah. I'm totally with you. I think culture isn't amenities in the same respect that hospitality isn't amenities. It isn't the things that you supply to people. It's how you supply it. It's what you give, the additional benefits. It's the whole package. And the exact same thing goes with culture in a tech company as it does in a hotel itself through management. You've got to have the right people in the right positions and passing that message from top to bottom and back up again. That's as important as it is coming from the top, is being able to listen to the people who are on the front line and doing their job. So, Adele hit the nail on the head there. Walking into the front desk and saying, hey, we really want to be number one, but then turning around and listening to what they're saying as to why we're not number one right now, getting that message from the client. It's the same in a tech company. You've got to have an ethos, you've got to stand for something, but then you've got to listen to the people who are doing the work, who are communicating with your clients on a day-to-day basis. Otherwise, it's just going to be a broken system and just another company.
Yeah.
I've been on a lot of customer service calls for different companies, insurance, car rent, all kinds of different things. And I only one of about 5 companies, when I said that something was a problem, did they make me feel like they're going to report it, they're going to find out the root cause, and it's going to be solved. And that's all I wanted, was to have that satisfaction. I wasn't asking for them to do something, for me, except solve my problem at the moment. But I wouldn't have walked away happy and that's how I walked away unhappy from those other companies, where I felt my comment just would die with that one person that I get.
Where you feel like you're the problem as opposed to the problem that you're actually telling me. That's how
this is how we do.
Yeah.
I have kind of 2 thoughts around that. And first of all, I think that this culture discussion is exhibiting a lot right now in the way that people are let go. And I think that we've talked about this quite a lot before, but just this past week, somebody actually took a picture of a letter and posted it on LinkedIn and said, hey, I know some of you have been reaching out about this or that with my hotel, but based on this certified letter that I received in the mail yesterday, I'm no longer employed there. So I can't really help
it. So effed up.
It was so awkward. A certified letter in the mail, no phone call, no, not even an email, nothing, just, proof that you've received this and you can come get your stuff. So that's
worse than the Zoom.
I heard about the Zoom.
It's so impersonal. But also on a second point, and kind of back to Ed's point, I'm sure that some of the people were listening to us over the last 10 or 15 minutes like, I can't even get my front desk agent to put in an email address into the guest reservation, let alone give me a keyword-specific contact. But I think if I were operating a hotel today, what I would do with my front desk agents is I would call them sales managers in training, and I would not hire for front desk skills. I would hire for sales manager skills, because sales managers care about the relationship, and it matters whether or not they record all of this information. And then the people who do the best at creating those relationships have an opportunity to move into the sales department over time. But rather than looking for, your typical high schooler who just wants a paycheck, really invest in those people, build your own pipeline of great salespeople that aren't just order takers, but they really can display how you have to kind of hunt and find and make it the best thing possible, and logging the information not just in the PMS, but right into their CRM. And I think that would be a really interesting way to kind of operate a front desk.
Well, and it would also be good to understand that the answer may not necessarily be changing your property or changing your people. It may be changing who you're acquiring as a customer. The answer isn't always how do we get better to meet that customer. Sometimes it's, are we just never going to be right for this specific consumer?
Sure.
And if that's the case, how do we make sure those consumers don't make it here?
Authentic communication. They read themselves out. If they understand that's not who we are.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll go to the hotel.
That was such a wax on moment there, Lily, for me. That was brilliant. That was total Miyagi, That was sales. I like that. I do like the sales.
Yeah. Well, to that sales manager idea too. It speaks. I mean, how you ask the question is as important as what you ask. So, like Ed was saying earlier, how was your stay? That's not a great question or a great way to ask it. But if I were to look you in the eye and smile at you and say, "Hey Ed, how was everything? Did you enjoy your drink at the bar last night?" Okay,
I'd be like, "How the heck did you know I had a drink at the bar, you weirdo?"
You charged it to your room.
It's on your bill.
It's on your bill.
I'd still say that though. What a weird question to ask. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
That freaks out when ads follow him, right? I just
when I have my name tag on and people are like, "Hey Ed," I'm like.
I know, especially if you like forget that you have your name tag on. I definitely was that person who would leave my front desk job and go to the gas station or something, and I'm like, why is everybody calling me by name?
Yeah, what's happening here? Am I on a milk carton? So do we want to dial this into something? Because that was a great conversation about something that I think most people are going to walk away going, okay. Do we want to pull this into something that maybe people could walk away with an insight that they could do something with?
Well, I'm curious. Loren kind of touted this as including something about predictive budgeting. Have you guys seen anything different either in your hotels or with your clients about the way that people are focusing on budgeting? Because it's we're starting budget season pretty much right now, and a lot of people have no clue where to start right now. So what are you guys seeing in that? And happy to share my thoughts after you guys chime in.
A big no budget is what we're hearing in many cases. Not every case, obviously, but it's we've just, like you said, no clue what the future is going to hold. We might have budget, we might not have budget. We're still waiting to find out more data on how the recovery is going to be before they can do that. So it's making 2021 just a complete enigma. It's a complete question mark right now.
But here's the thing. They should look to how fast growth companies have constructed budgets. Because as a fast growth company, you end up tethering line items together. So you hit certain types of revenue thresholds that unlocks certain types of spending. So you start with a very, simplistic, here are the core spends, here are the thresholds that we have to hit. So those core spends are hit. And then when you start ratcheting above those thresholds, that unlocks investments into other parts of the business. I had to do that for years at Easy Yield because there were 2 or 3 years that we were impossible to forecast because of the craziness. And it was really when we moved from kind of a standard product that, independent hotels bought. So when we moved into enterprise and we were in enterprise grade architecture, because a single deal could add 30% to the company's revenue in a single contract. And it made it really difficult to just come out and say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to hit this target. And we tried. And every time we were too conservative on what we'd be able to achieve. And so it screwed up our spending. So then we moved to this idea of a tethered budget, where when you hit certain markers, it opened up and made a much more complex budget structure.
I don't know how hotels will be able to even get their heads around that, let alone try and implement
it's completely different than anything you've ever done.
It is. That would be it'd be incredible if we could do it. It would be very dynamic, and it's kind of what is needed. But I just can't see a lot of my clients. Yeah, they'll say, tether what now? Yeah.
Well, there's the big challenge. Tristan and I, of course, work mostly in the digital marketing, and there's the challenge of how do you do marketing when you don't have a marketing budget? So what do you do with it? And so a lot of hoteliers are turning to more of the commission-oriented programs. And so things like what Google's doing right now with their pay-per-stay on metasearch, things like that. I can give you a long list of reasons why I don't like that model, but I can't argue the fact that if you don't have a marketing budget, those are the kind of things that you have to look for, right? Is how can I still market and pay after the guest has stayed instead of in front of it?
Yeah. Dean, I don't disagree with you at all. And I think you're right. A lot of people are moving to those programs, but it also kind of begs the point. We all complain about the OTAs and the over-reliance on OTAs. In fact, I heard that earlier today.
Yep.
And yet that's exactly what a lot of those programs end up doing. You become over-reliant on something that you're going to, at the end of the day, the cost of getting the business from that man, yes, you don't pay out front. So it's easy to, when I don't have a marketing budget, but I could acquire that guest for much cheaper with other avenues and other strategies. So it's kind of balancing that. I think maybe to simplify, Ed, your all over, here, is just even looking at a very base level. Okay, we think we're going to hit here. And so based on that, we're going to come up with a base level budget. But you know what? If we start to trend where we're going to hit here, we bring in these other things. And then if we, so you have kind of 3 tiers at a just very simplistic level. This is, like you said, our core operating expenses. This is what we've got to have in the budget no matter what. And if we start to see the market coming back and we're doing all the right things and we're starting to see great occupancy, great revenue numbers, when we hit here, we're going to unleash these additional things. And then when we hit here, we're going to unleash these additional things. So kind of in line with what you said, but maybe in a much more simplistic structure, because I gotta agree with Tristan. I think many of the hotels trying to do it the way you mentioned, it's not going to work. And especially when you think of some of these bigger companies that have 100, 200, 300, 500 hotels that they're then trying to roll up to.
Yeah,
not this year.
Bake their noodle, completely bake their noodle. I think the what do you think on this though, Tammie? The potential issue you've got there. If we hit this revenue, then it'll unlock more money. It depends on where you set that marker, because you often need the more money to hit that revenue. It's kind of like it kind of kills itself. And speaking purely digital marketing here, and direct digital marketing, it's difficult. You've got to really. It's quite a negotiation to try and just edge it just a little bit lower, so it will unlock that. So you'll actually get that higher. Because we know as digital marketers, we're going to get it, even in a compressed market, even at 40% occupancy, because you just become more, agile, become slightly more aggressive if the hotel will allow you to do it. And it's about getting market share of what's out there, because there are people traveling. You just want more of it than your comps in. But it's doing that negotiation.
No, look, I 100% agree. And you're right. The downfall of that tiered approach is, like you said, you've got to spend more money to make more money. And so how do you figure those out? And unfortunately, I think this is going to be a really interesting budgeting season, because let's be real, there's a lot of experience on my screen. None of us have been through anything like this before, right?
No one has.
So, I think maybe 100 years ago, Great Depression. The good news is hopefully this is our 1 in 100 year mark. And, so I just think you're right. We need to really balance. And that's where the conversations with clients, I was talking to my team yesterday. Hey guys, get ready. Budget season's coming. We're hitting July next week. Some of the hotels, a lot of the guys I'm talking to are starting in August this year. But so it's starting to think through, like, we're doing a lot of work on recovery strategies and what kinds of things can they be doing, and how, how do you help build and grow the revenue that's coming back into the hotel and build that trust so that you can increase demand and you can get people to book with you. But I think it's going to be a really interesting budget season, because I do think a lot of hotels are going to try and apply the same systems and processes that they have for the last 20 years. And I don't know that it's going to
fail.
It's right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So,
well, I think too, from my perspective, one of the things that we haven't really touched on as a revenue management field, where we do a lot of the budgeting along with the operations, is cash flow projections. Because in the current environment, it's important that people understand that your P&L doesn't necessarily mean that you have cash in the bank. So what does that mean for you in how you're planning your budgeting? And it's really fascinating. I'm glad that I started this company 8 years ago, because I've gone through some of this myself, in that our business has very little seasonality. A lot of times we're hired because somebody's gotten a new job, and other than, waiting out year-end bonuses, that very seldom has anything to do with the time of year. So we always have to kind of throw a little bit of a dart at where our revenues are going to fall month by month as a consulting firm. So we've gotten really used to what we call zero-based budgeting, which is similar to the official zero-based budgeting, but we kind of look at, okay, what is the fixed cost that we have to cover and where do we need to be for that? And then for every additional dollar, how much of that is going to go to staffing? How much of that is going to go to, projects that we want to accomplish? So we create almost like a floating barometer for flow through with additional dollars, keeping in mind that, for a hotel, for example, if you forecast 5% occupancy, you need X number of housekeepers. At what point does that jump up one more housekeeper? And how are you doing that? So since this is a show of shameless plugging, I will remind everybody that episode 1 of the Think Up Enterprises Hospitality Revenue Management podcast literally walks you through this calculation. It was originally around how to close your hotel, but the same metrics work for budgeting when you're uncertain about your revenue future. So
I think that's an interesting point you bring up about P&L and cash flow, because we've been guilty of it in this conversation here, saying, hey, just you need to have your marketing on, and you absolutely do. But the reality is, there's some hotels that may still owe money from previous marketing and other vendors that when this mad rush came that everything's dried up, everybody's cancelling, quick, we're pulling everything, and now we're furloughing staff. There's still going to be invoices that are outstanding from pre-COVID-19 for some properties. And that is, when you open back up, you're not opening back up at the same level. It's going to be a huge conundrum and a huge, huge problem for a lot of properties. But you've still got to operate, you've still got to pay your staff, you've still got to market, you've still got to use the OTAs, you've still got to do everything that you were doing previously to kind of get the business in so you can pay that off in the past. And that's complicating budgets yet further, because it's like, well, what does that picture look like before we can even look at what the future is going to be? And I think to Tammie, to your point, you there mentioned about your teams and it's budgeting season. The biggest advice that I would give and what we've given out to our teams in the past is just communicate. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised at how difficult and awkward those conversations can be with some people. They're not comfortable about talking about money, and even though it's not their money and it's company budget and whatever, it's still quite an awkward conversation. But we're in totally unique situation, as we said. Just if you're a hotel, be open and honest and have that information and say, hey, look, this is the situation we're in, because then your marketer or the service provider can pivot and build a plan for you, ready that takes into that big chunk of money that you may own. Equally, the marketer has got to turn around and say, what is your position? Because it's pointless me doing a whole lot of work and saying, hey, let's go and spend $100,000 a month, when the reality is you've got 100.
Right. And you have to balance it, because, of course, it increases your cash flow later on. But what is the timing after which you expect to see an ROI? And for how long can you maintain this expense until you see an ROI? Because we're all about, you should really keep all your sales, marketing, and revenue management people too right now. But there's a lot of should, and there's a lot of what can you actually do. So this is obviously all of our comments for the past weeks on what you really should be focused on are valid, but they do assume that you have cash to focus on these things, that you're making strategic, smart budgeting decisions with what you have, given the uncertainty of how long it's going to take till demand really resurfaces.
So the pay per stay makes sense at this time. Exactly,
and that's the reason what the Dean's making there. It's not the best marketing solution for a hotel, but it's the best for a hotel right now, given the set of circumstances. And that makes total sense to me. The question is going to be that when we all eventually dig ourselves out of this hole, is not to rely on it and it become another OTA type channel where it's an over-reliance. It becomes I'm going to keep it until I'm ready, and then I'm going to move it, to Tammie's point, to a much more efficient digital marketing channel or way of getting that booker in at the most cost-effective point. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to disappear off. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you all. Have a great weekend. And if anybody wants to get in contact with me, I'm available at tris.heaword at 3and6.agency, and that's 3 and 6 all in letters, not numbers. And once again, thanks very much. See you all later.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Tristan. Bye.
I think, Tristan brought up a really good point there. At the end of the day, do something, do anything, just don't do nothing. The worst thing you can do right now is do nothing. But do something with the understanding that you're probably going to be wrong. Be agile and have plan B ready to go, and a plan C, and probably a plan D, and several other ones in the alphabet, right? So be nimble and being ready to adapt. And case in point, I can remember actually on this very show about 3 months ago in March, we were a little bit earlier in the COVID scenario at the time. And I remember we were having a conversation. We were just talking about what does COVID look like? And we all predicted that COVID would be subsided by the summer. And there were actually all kinds of polls out there in the industry. You can find them all over LinkedIn, the images and so forth, the infographics. So yeah, it will be better. We'll be coming back by summer. Well, we're in June now, almost July. Here we are. But at the time, we also said that, hey, big brands like, let's say, Wyndham, they've got these budgets that are allocated for these things. They're just not spending right now, but they'll be spending in Q4, was the prediction. Guess what? That's no longer the case, right? So everything we said 3 months ago, wrong, okay? And that's going to happen. And we have to keep adapting. We have to keep looking at the new realities. Gosh, I just used that word. I can't believe I used that phrase. Anyway, but that's the way it is right now. And what we see 6 months from now is not going to be the same thing that we're saying today.
At least you said new realities and not new normal.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Even a few weeks ago, we would have, but we probably wouldn't have expected the close down again in places that have already reopened, for example. Or for New York to say, I'm sorry, other states, you can't come. Even Florida, where we are so tightly connected, we call it the 6th borough.
So true. Yeah, it definitely puts a crimp on things, and I think that was an appropriate ruh-roh from Robert's standpoint, because other states may also follow suit, and the more we see things like this, the more of a damper it's going to put on travel. Not that I necessarily disagree with stopping the spread, obviously, from state to state, but I think sometimes a lot of the rules that we see coming out of this are more related to politics than they are to anything else, unfortunately.
We can go down a huge rabbit hole with that topic.
Which is why I brought it up at 10:22.
Yeah, I think that maybe, in addition to it being data-driven, because they're watching the numbers and they'll change that rule as soon as the numbers change, but I think maybe it'll even make some people more comfortable with coming to New York, for example, because those people, if they, you know what, they're blocking the places where there are flare-ups. So I feel good that something is being done. That means that in Connecticut and New Jersey, we have a lot of people coming to New York. Even from New York State, we have people coming to New York City in normal situations. And we are saying that the drive area is going to be our first response, right? So maybe there's something fair to saying, don't worry, we're watching out for you. Maybe it'll be better.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I guess that was a mic drop. We can't add anything to that.
I have to run. Thanks so much. I put my contact in the box.
Thanks, Adele, and thanks for the great summary. I saw you summarizing over there for the listeners, so appreciate that.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Adele.
Bye. Thanks.
And then there were 3.
Yes. Any last topics we want to hit on before we wrap up for today?
Tammie?
No, I'm good. I just showed up to hang out today, so.
Well, we appreciate you both joining in.
You know, we've talked about in previous shows as we look at some of the recovery of the industry and where we see it really taking place. One thing I will say that we were right on is camping in RV communities and luxury RV resorts and everything. Good grief. Those things are taking off and skyrocketing like beyond belief, just insane. And I understand why. You know, you can bring your own RV. It's your own home. It's safe. It's social distancing, unless everybody's packed in there, of course. But you know, it's a good route. But the other thing I think that we're seeing right now, and I wish Stuart was on the line here with us, but Stuart from Fuel Travel is on the board with the Myrtle Beach CVB, and they've had people coming every weekend. Their weekends have been 90% occupancy and better. And what we're seeing is that even though we keep hearing reports about record-breaking numbers of COVID and record-breaking numbers of COVID, be it right or be it wrong, society's getting to a point where they don't care. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is the reality, right? So take that however you will. And as such, I think that's good for travel, but I think we have to be careful with it as well, too, because we can screw it up really easy as well. So very delicate balance.
It's that psychological fatigue setting in. And
it really is.
I'm hearing it all across. I mean, even my parents were like, you know, it's weird, but I feel like coronavirus is over. And I'm not sure why, because logically I know it's not, but I just hit this wall one day and all of a sudden I no longer care.
Exactly.
And I think that, you know, they're even in an at-risk population. So I think it's very difficult for the human mind to sustain these kinds of restrictions and alterations to who we are naturally at our core for an extended period of time. And for that reason, whether there's restrictions or no restrictions, I think we're going to see people continue to go out. I think we're going to see the spike in cases. It's important to obviously keep an eye on the healthcare situation, because that was really the main reason to flatten the curve, right? Was to give them a chance to catch up and all of those things. But I think that it's really important that we do take those safety measures. We make sure the staff are wearing their masks correctly, that we're observing social distancing in the hotels and being responsible with the gift of the demand that we have been given right now, so that we're not contributing, but we're also not slowing down the demand for travel. So it's a very fine balance we have to walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, it's interesting. One of the biggest things I'm seeing, you know, on a couple different hospitality groups, isn't so much the hotel having trouble with the policies or the things they put in place, masks, the plexiglass at the front desk, the extra cleaning, all of those things. The biggest complaint they're getting and the biggest challenge they're having is other guests not following the social distancing rules. So really interesting to kind of see over the next few weeks, like how those things impact. I know, you know, for us, I mean, I'm out in California, in the Bay Area, where we finally, you know, 2 weeks ago, I can go sit at an outside restaurant now. I still can't go inside a restaurant, but I can sit outside a restaurant. And, you know, we've been talking about, we're seeing kind of a lot of people are getting more lax, right? We actually went to our mall last week, and I have to admit, after being in there for 15 minutes, we walked out and was kind of like, we're going to wait a bit to come back, because we saw too many people not wearing masks, not following, you know, rules, kind of getting a little close. It's like, okay. And, but you're right. I think there is a lot of that fatigue about this. It's like, you know, gosh, I just want to get on a plane and, you know, go to Disney. I mean, regardless of what, good or bad, I just want to, you know, go do something, right? So,
right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these next few months kind of follow through, and especially as states are spiking and some states are coming down, and some of the rules that get put in place.
Yeah, and I hope everybody does have a chance to go in and actually read the McKinsey article, because they talked about that as well, about the kind of fear of other travelers being a main point. There's just so much good data that we couldn't possibly have talked about all of it today. But I definitely recommend that you, all of our listeners, go back and listen to it. So I did not know that I was closing out the show today, so I will do my best to remember Loren's spiel. But since we are approaching the end of our time, Dean, can you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Absolutely. Well, website is pending, actually, so I've got something in development with that. For right now, you can find me on LinkedIn, just searching for Dean Schmit. And I do a lot of things in the area of digital marketing, reputation management. I'm very fond of that. Glad we had Adele on the show. She's an expert in that as well. And probably the core is meta search marketing can help people out with that.
Excellent. Thank you. And Tammie, thanks for joining us also. Where can people find more about you and Milestone?
Thanks. So I'm head of hospitality at Milestone. You can find me on LinkedIn at Tammie Carlisle. I'll drop my email here in the comments section as well, milestoneinternet.com, digital agency. And then I'm just going to do a shameless self-plug. Next week on Wednesday, we've been doing a webinar series on recovery, and we actually have Chip Conley will be our guest speaker next Wednesday. So feel free to shoot me an email, send me a link, or just if you go to LinkedIn for Milestone, you'll find the link to register.
Excellent. Lots of good content coming out from you guys, which we appreciate very much.
Thanks.
Awesome. And I'm Lily Mockerman, CEO of Total Customized Revenue Management, where we focus on excellence in all things day-to-day revenue management, and founding partner of ThinkUp Enterprises, where we focus on consultations, profitability by channel assessments, technology selection and audit projects, and many more things, as well as the podcast, which I linked to during my shameless plug about episode 1 earlier. So thank you all for joining this. If I remember correctly, this is simulcast at a different time zone later on for the recording for those of you who are joining us from Asia Pacific and other areas around the world. And we hope that you will join us again next week for show 256. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend.